The list of Canada's top 10 most stolen vehicles for 2024, it was just released. The data coming from Equité. That's an association, a national authority on insurance crime and fraud prevention. The national numbers are trending downwards, but there is still a lot to go over in this report, including the new vehicle that has taken the top spot. David Common is here to break this list down for us. I know anyone who owns a car is like, please tell me it's not mine. So let's talk about the trends first. What are we seeing across Canada?
Yeah, so let's talk about all of that. Number one, auto theft is not going to be in a record-setting year, but it's still very, very bad. The numbers are still very, very high. They've just come down slightly from where they were because of law enforcement, government efforts, and resources have been going into things. We are seeing an evolution of the most stolen numbers. I'm going to show you two different numbers. One is the most stolen. That's like numerically the most stolen vehicle. Here it is. So Toyota RAV4 right at the top of that list, the Dodge Ram 1500, the Honda CR-V, the Ford F-150. Those have long been in the top frame there, the Honda Civic as well. Let me just explain to you why those top five in particular are the most stolen. It is because there are more of those vehicles on the road than almost any other vehicle. So the CR-V, there's 1 million of them in Canada. The RAV4, there's 1 million of them in Canada. It just means there are more of them available to steal. Yes, they are desirable overseas because they are seen as reliable vehicles that people want, and so when a vehicle like that gets stolen, it often ends up abroad. Not exclusively. There are other things that are happening with it. Increasingly, we're seeing them being chopped up in chop shops here in this country because there's such demand for parts. There's also revinning, which is taking the vehicle number, the vehicle identification number, changing it out to make it look like a different vehicle. We actually heard from Brian Gast, who's from Equité Association. He talked exactly about this. You can look at his quote here right now, saying that we're seeing a shift towards stolen vehicles being revinned for sale or disassembled in illegal chop shops. So that's a key message there. A thing to be mindful of. If you're buying a car on something like Facebook Marketplace, really do your homework. That vehicle could well be stolen. It may look clean with a new VIN, but if it was registered before in Alberta or in Delaware, you should have some alarm bells going.
So those are the red flags. Obviously, cars are zooming around our city all across the country. They are easy to get because there's so many of them, as you mentioned. But are there certain cars that are targeted because they're easier to get into?
There are certainly vehicles that are easier to get into, and then there's vehicles that are just much more desirable. So you think about Russia, for instance, huge demand for our cars there because of sanctions, and so there are vehicles that are being targeted. Let's look at the most targeted list, which is the number that I find most important, not the most stolen, but the most frequently stolen. So that one at the top of the list, the Lexus TX series. In Ontario, 1 in 4 of those vehicles were stolen just in 2024. 1 in 4 of them. Like, there's a huge number. The Grand Highlander, also very high numbers. You're looking at vehicles so there's the TX there. Just think about that. I mean, I look at that number 1 in 4. It says to me, the thieves have inside knowledge. How are they finding out where all those vehicles are, that they're in people's driveways, that where they are? There has to be somebody who's providing registration addresses for something like that. I imagine law enforcement is on it, but you look back at that list, Land Rover, the Range Rover, they've always been high on the list, the Mercedes-Benz G-Class. Those are the kinds of vehicles, frankly, that end up in the Middle East, in Russia. When you're looking at the Grand Highlander, that's going off into West Africa. Or, as I say, we're also seeing them being chopped up. So when you look at these lists every year, I always say to people, yes, look at the most stolen, but don't be alarmed if you're driving a Civic or a CR-V or a RAV4 or a Ram or an F-150. There's just a lot of them there available to steal. Think more about